So feeding space and drinking space is also very important. We want to try as much as we can to minimize pressure on drinkers and on feeders. So as you can see, these chick phones and these feeders, the ratio that we recommend is that for every one drinker, there are 50 chicks to drink from there. And as well for the feeder as well. So one feeder is for 50 chicks. One drinker is for 50 chicks. So just make sure that you maintain that ratio correctly so that there's no bullying. Remember that other chicks can actually bully some who are not as strong. So in order to avoid that, we really have to make sure that our feeding space and our drinking space is equal to the number of the birds that we have in here. Okay, so when it comes to the temperature of the house, the most important thing that we need to look at is what we call chick behavior, right? So when you look at the distribution of the chicks, it must tell you whether the chicks are feeling cold or whether they're feeling warm. If chicks are feeling cold, they all go to one corner or under the brooder where they cuddle and they lie under the brooder because they're trying to warm themselves. If you see such behavior, it means that your heat distribution in the chicken house is not fairly distributed. And when chicks are warm or they are hot, you see them panting. And remember, when chicks are panting, they lose water and they don't gain any weight. So number one, before you even use these thermometers, the first thing that you have to look at is the chick behavior. How are your chicks behaving? And even without a temperature, you can actually tell whether the chicks are okay or not, right? So what we have in here is a thermometer, and this is a maximum and minimum thermometer. The beauty of this thermometer is that it tells you the minimum ever reached, the temperature ever reached, and also the maximum, and then the actual at your time of recording. So here I can actually tell that it went up all the way to 32 at some point, and at some point it went down to 26. So that's a fluctuation that you already know that happened whilst you were not there, right? So and at day 3, we are expecting the temperature to be around 29 degrees Celsius in the brooder. And this is actually very correct because it's reading 29. Another mistake that I've seen people making is that they have their thermometers hung up like this when chicks are down there. The correct level to place our thermometers is what we call at chick level. Because remember, we want to know what the temperature is like where the chicks are. If we put our thermometer here, we are taking temperature up here and yet the chicks are there. So make sure all your as you can see, they've lined up all these thermometers down at chick level, and this will ensure that they are taking and recording the correct temperature. And so just for me to check against their temperature, I also got my portable one that I move around with, and I can also just verify. Right, okay, so mine is 30, but it's because my laser is just under the brooder. But if I come here, it's 29.5. So this is just to verify that the temperatures that they're recording and what I've recorded is also correct. So we always want you to take note of the temperature all the time, and you can actually plot a graph against your so that when something happens in the following days, you can relate it back to the temperature fluctuations. Normally, we do not recommend any fluctuation that is above 2 degrees. So from 29, it can go up to 31, but not to 33. That will be too much, and it cannot go lower than 26 or 25. So this is just to maintain the temperature almost in the same range. What happens to the birds is when there's so much temperature fluctuations, this is where you begin to see pest advance. I will show you one when I come across it. This is when the chick has got a closed back, and it can't really let out the droppings well because the vent is pasted. And this normally is a sign of dehydration caused by fluctuations in temperatures. While she's still there on trying to warm up, so remember now we are in summer and our brooding is about 2 weeks, so which is 14 days from placement. So we are still brooding these chicks. And so many people have asked, what if I just put them on the sun? The purpose of brooding, remember, for our roadrunner or our indigenous chickens, whenever they've got their little ones, they sit on them to try and warm them up. But because these 8,000 birds don't have a mother anymore, we need to make sure that we are providing them with the heat that they need. And the heat will help them to grow so that we can get the targets we want. So here, the system that we are using at this farm, we call these charcoal burners, or we call them baura in Shona. And these use charcoal, right? And an ideal one that we would really recommend is whereby they put charcoal in here and then they put a chimney which goes out so that smoke doesn't build up. But as you can see, so I presume what these guys are doing is that they light them up outside and then they can bring them inside when there's no smoke coming out, or else they will use a better charcoal that doesn't really smoke, because smoke particles are not good for the respiratory of the young chickens. So the correct height for this baura is about 90 centimeters or so from the ground. The higher the higher the better. If we put it too close, we've got the risk of maybe burning the chicks, and even remember these are wood shavings and they can catch fire. But if we leave space there, then it is actually very safe for our chicken house. Okay, so now we need to talk about lighting, which is also another important factor, especially at this age. So there's so many people who confuse a lighting source and a heating source when they are using infrared lamps. So remember, the infrared lamps which are not here, they are using the charcoal burners for heating. They're those infrared lamps that are for giving heat or warmth to our chickens. So that's not for lighting, in as much as they can also give a little bit of light, but that light cannot be used with the chicks to see where they're going to see their feed. So we actually recommend that you have as many as you can, these light bulbs that are very bright. And we normally say, when you get into the chicken house, you must be able to read a newspaper, and that can show you that that's the correct light intensity that you are providing. The importance of light first is for me or the houseman. For when he gets into the chicken house, he needs to see where he's going so that he doesn't step onto the chicks, and also he can actually see from afar that there is trouble there and he can run there. And it's also mainly for the chickens. We need them to see, to locate where the feeders are, where the drinkers are, and they need to have a very good lighting in their house. So light is also very important, and you must provide as much as you can so that the chickens can actually see. I just want to show you so curtain management. And curtain management talks directly to ventilation. Remember, we need to have adequate ventilation inside our chicken house, right? Remember, these little chicks, they breathe in oxygen and they breathe out carbon dioxide. So we need to make sure that in as much as we are trying to contain the warmth, but we also need to let the bad gases out. And I'm talking about carbon dioxide, I'm talking about ammonia, I'm talking about carbon monoxide from the charcoal burners, right? All these bad gases, they need to go out, and we need to allow oxygen to come in. So curtain management is when you are managing these curtains, right? You are managing them so that if it's too cold, you raise them up, right? And I'm just going to show you the correct way of doing it. So when it's hot, we lower them like this. So it depends. You will be looking at the chick behavior, and you also look at your thermometers. If you feel that it's getting too hot, you continue to lower them. And as you can see, there are these hooks, and you can actually hook them lower and lower, right? If you feel that the temperatures are now getting lower, you just come and you actually raise them up. So you hook them up like this, and you can hook them all the way, and you just leave a gap of about 15 or so centimeters to allow fresh air to get in.